Before you took your first breath. Did you know something you were never meant to remember? Millions of people now believe the Book of Enoch contains an astonishing secret. They claim every human soul once possessed heavenly knowledge. But that was the moment we entered this world. Those memories disappeared forever. It is one of the fastest growing claims surrounding the Book of Enoch. But there's one question almost nobody asks. Does the ancient text actually say it? Search almost any platform today, and you'll find countless videos making the same extraordinary promise. They tell us that before birth, every human being understood the mysteries of heaven. We supposedly knew who God was. We knew why we were created. Some even claim we remembered our previous existence. Until those memories were erased forever at birth. It's a breathtaking idea. If it were true, it would completely reshape the way we understand life itself. But extraordinary claims deserve extraordinary evidence. And that's exactly what we're here to examine. At first, this may sound like nothing more than an interesting theory. But look closer, and you'll discover why it has captured the imagination of so many people. Because if humanity truly entered this world having forgotten heaven, then every unexplained longing, every search for meaning, every feeling that we were made for something beyond this life, suddenly takes on an entirely different significance. The claim doesn't simply change how we read the Book of Enoch. It changes how people understand themselves. There is only one problem. Most discussions stop before asking the most important question. Where exactly does the Book of Enoch say this? Not someone's interpretation. Not a summary. Not a quote shared on social media. The actual text. The actual passage. The actual evidence. That's where our investigation begins. Because if the claim is true, the manuscript should speak for itself. Before we continue, if you're fascinated by ancient civilizations, forgotten books, biblical mysteries, and documentaries that investigate original sources instead of simply repeating popular claims, consider subscribing to the Ninth Tablet. Every investigation on this channel begins with a question, follows the historical evidence, examines the ancient texts, and let the documents speak before we draw conclusions. If that's the kind of history you enjoy, you're in the right place. To understand this mystery, we first need to understand the book itself. The Book of Enoch is one of the most fascinating works to survive from the ancient world. Although it isn't included in the biblical canon of most Christian traditions, it remained preserved in the Ethiopian Church, and fragments of it were later discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls near Qumran. Those discoveries confirmed something remarkable. Large portions of the book were already circulating centuries before the time of Jesus. Its pages describe rebellious angels, heavenly journeys, cosmic mysteries, divine judgment, and a future hope that injustice would not have the final word. It is mysterious. It is influential. And because of that, it has become one of the most misunderstood ancient books in the world. But as we began reading the Book of Enoch from beginning to end, something unexpected happened. We found visions, prophecies, angels, judgment, and heavenly mysteries. But the claim we were searching for remained strangely difficult to find. That raised a new question. Were we looking in the wrong chapter? Or had the internet combined several ancient ideas into one unforgettable story? To answer that, we had to begin reading the text, line by line. Every historical investigation has to begin with the same principle. Before asking what people believe, we ask what the source actually says. That's especially important with ancient books. Over centuries, stories grow. Traditions develop. Interpretations evolve. But manuscripts remain stubbornly honest. They preserve the words that were written, even when later generations read something different into them. So before listening to commentators, before considering theories, before accepting viral claims, we open the Book of Enoch itself. If the modern claim were accurate, we expected to find a passage that clearly described it. Perhaps Enoch would tell us that human souls once lived with God. Perhaps he would describe memories being removed before birth. Perhaps an angel would explain why humanity had forgotten its heavenly home. Those expectations seemed reasonable, because that is precisely how the claim is often presented online. But history has taught us something important. Ancient texts rarely say exactly what modern summaries claim they say. That's why context matters. And context can completely change the meaning of a passage. As we began reading, another pattern quickly emerged. The Book of Enoch is not primarily concerned with human origins. Instead, it focuses on cosmic rebellion. Its opening chapters introduce us to the Watchers. Angels who abandon their appointed place, descend to the earth, and corrupt humanity with forbidden knowledge. Metalworking, sorcery, astrology, weapons of war. Secrets that, according to the text, humanity was never meant to possess in that way. From the very beginning, Enoch's attention is fixed on corruption, judgment, and restoration, not on forgotten memories before birth. So if Enoch isn't discussing forgotten memories, why do so many readers believe he is? The answer begins with the way the book describes hidden knowledge. Throughout the narrative, Enoch is repeatedly shown mysteries that ordinary people cannot see. The movements of the stars, the dwelling places of angels, the coming judgment, the destiny of kings. Time after time, knowledge descends from heaven. It is revealed, not remembered. That distinction may seem subtle, but it changes the entire discussion. Revelation and recollection are not the same thing. Eventually, our search brought us to one of the most frequently referenced chapters in the entire Book of Enoch. Chapter 22. If you've watched videos about souls before birth, you've almost certainly heard this chapter mentioned. It describes 4 great hollow places inside a mountain, where spirits are separated. To many modern readers, it sounds like a description of souls waiting to enter the world. And at first glance, it's easy to understand why. The imagery is mysterious. The language is symbolic. The setting feels almost timeless. But first impressions are not always reliable. So instead of stopping after a few verses, we read the entire chapter carefully. At first, everything seemed to support the popular interpretation. Spirits, hidden chambers, a mysterious mountain. But then, one sentence changed everything. A sentence that most summaries never mention. Because those spirits were not waiting to be born. They were waiting for judgment. If chapter 22 wasn't describing life before birth, Then why had so many people connected it to the viral claim? To answer that, we needed to slow down even further and examine the chapter, verse by verse. Chapter 22 begins unlike almost any other passage in the Book of Enoch. Enoch isn't standing in a city. He's not watching the stars. He's not speaking with the watchers. Instead, the angel Raphael leads him to a place unlike anything he has ever seen. Before him stands a vast mountain. But this is no ordinary mountain. Inside it are enormous hollow chambers, hidden from the world of the living. Enoch immediately realizes he is looking into the unseen realm. Modern readers often focus on the spirits. Ancient readers noticed something else first. The mountain. Throughout the ancient Near East, mountains were viewed as places where heaven and earth seemed to meet. Moses met God on Mount Sinai. The prophets often received visions on mountains. Even in surrounding cultures, mountains represented places where the divine world touched the human one. So when Raphael brings Enoch to a mountain, ancient readers immediately understand something important. This isn't simply geography. It's sacred space. A place where hidden realities become visible. One detail often goes unnoticed. It isn't Michael or Gabriel who guides Enoch here. It's Raphael. His name means God heals. Throughout Jewish tradition, Raphael is associated with healing, guidance, and God's mercy. That makes his role here especially significant. He isn't merely showing Enoch frightening visions. He's helping him understand God's justice. Then Enoch notices something extraordinary. The mountain doesn't contain one chamber. It contains 4. Why 4? The text explains that the spirits are separated according to their condition. The righteous are not gathered together with the wicked. Those awaiting vindication are not placed beside those awaiting punishment. This is one of the earliest surviving Jewish descriptions of differentiated waiting after death. Long before many later theological debates, Enoch already presents a picture of divine justice operating even before the final judgment. In other words, death is not the end of God's justice. It is only the beginning of another stage. Then comes one of the chapter's most remarkable moments. Raphael explains that one of the voices crying out belongs to Abel. The same Abel whose blood cried from the ground after Cain murdered him in Genesis. Even after death, Abel's cry continues. Not because God has forgotten him, but because justice has not yet reached its completion. This is a powerful theme throughout the Book of Enoch. Evil may appear to triumph for a time. The righteous may suffer. The wicked may prosper. But heaven has not closed its eyes. Divine justice has simply not reached its appointed day. And then, we arrive at the sentence that changed the direction of our investigation. Raphael identifies these occupants with remarkable clarity. They are the spirits of the dead. Not unborn children. Not souls preparing for earthly life. Not people waiting to receive physical bodies. The chapter is describing those who have already lived, already died, and are now awaiting God's final judgment. Once we recognized that, the modern interpretation became much more difficult to sustain. So why do so many people still connect chapter 22 with life before birth? Perhaps because the imagery is so mysterious. Hidden chambers. Invisible spirits. A world beyond ordinary sight. It's easy to see how readers searching for answers about human origins could read their own questions into the passage. But responsible historical reading asks a different question. Not, what could this passage mean to me? But, what did it mean to the people who first heard it? And in its original context. Chapter 22 is concerned with death, justice, and God's final judgment. If chapter 22 wasn't the source of the viral claim, then another possibility remained. A much shorter chapter. Often overlooked. Yet surrounded by enormous speculation. Chapter 42. A chapter about wisdom herself. And once again, appearances would prove deceptive. By this point, one possibility had been ruled out. Chapter 22 wasn't describing unborn souls. It was describing the dead awaiting judgment. Yet our investigation wasn't over. Again and again, readers pointed us toward another passage. A chapter so short. Many people read past it in less than a minute. Yet some believe these few verses contain the key to the entire mystery. Chapter 42. A chapter not about angels. Not about giants. But about something far more unusual. Wisdom herself. One of the first surprises waiting in chapter 42 is that wisdom is described almost like a living person. To modern readers, this may seem unusual. But ancient Jewish literature often used poetic imagery to describe God's wisdom. Wisdom walks. Wisdom speaks. Wisdom calls. Wisdom searches. This literary technique is known as personification. Rather than describing wisdom as an abstract idea, the author gives it human characteristics. We find similar imagery in the Book of Proverbs, where wisdom cries aloud in the streets, inviting people to follow the path of righteousness. So before we ask what chapter 42 means, we first have to understand the language it uses. Then the story takes an unexpected turn. According to Enoch, wisdom comes from heaven, searching for a place to dwell among humanity. Imagine that image for a moment. Wisdom isn't hidden. She isn't locked away. She comes looking for us. The implication is profound. Humanity isn't abandoned. Heaven reaches toward the earth. But when wisdom arrives, she finds no lasting place among people. Instead, the chapter says she returns to heaven. The chapter doesn't end with wisdom's departure. Instead, it introduces another character. Unrighteousness. Unlike wisdom, unrighteousness finds a home among humanity. The contrast is deliberate. One is welcomed. The other is rejected. Enoch isn't describing forgotten memories. He's describing a moral tragedy. Humanity refuses divine wisdom and embraces corruption instead. That theme echoes throughout the entire book. The rebellion of the Watchers. Violence filling the earth. Pride. Oppression. All of it flows from humanity turning away from God's order. So where does the modern interpretation come from? Some readers reason like this. If wisdom once came from heaven, and humanity no longer possesses that wisdom, perhaps people once knew heavenly truths, and then forgot them. It's an understandable conclusion. But is it the conclusion the text itself reaches? Notice what Enoch never says. He never says every soul lived in heaven before birth. He never says memories were erased. He never describes God removing knowledge from human minds. Those ideas must be supplied from somewhere else. They aren't stated here. This may be the most important distinction in our entire investigation. Throughout the Book of Enoch, knowledge comes through revelation. Angels explain mysteries. God reveals hidden things. Enoch is shown visions. Doors are opened. The heavens are unveiled. At no point does Enoch recover forgotten memories from a previous life. He learns because heaven reveals. Not because his soul remembers. That pattern repeats again. And again. And again. Once we noticed it, we began asking a different question. If the idea didn't originate here, where did it come from? By now, two of the most frequently cited passages had been carefully examined. Neither one explicitly taught the claim we were investigating. Yet the idea itself was undeniably ancient. It appeared in conversations, books, and across the internet. Which meant our investigation had reached a new stage. We had to leave the Book of Enoch and begin following the idea itself. Across civilizations. Across centuries. Across entirely different traditions. By now, the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. We had examined the two passages most often cited as evidence. Chapter 22 and Chapter 42. Both were fascinating. Both contained profound theological ideas. But neither explicitly described humanity losing its memory before birth. That left us with two possibilities. Either the evidence was hidden somewhere else in the Book of Enoch, or the modern claim had combined ideas from different traditions into a single story. To find out, we had to leave the Book of Enoch behind. At least for a moment. One of the easiest mistakes we can make is assuming that because an idea is popular online, it must have originated online. But ideas have journeys. They travel across languages, across kingdoms, across centuries. Long before social media, stories spread through travelers, teachers, scribes, and communities. Sometimes those stories remained remarkably faithful. Sometimes they changed. Sometimes two different traditions merged together until people forgot they had ever been separate. Historians call this the transmission of tradition. Understanding that process is essential if we want to know where an idea truly began. During our research, one biblical verse appeared again and again. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. For many people, this sounds remarkably close to the modern claim. But let's slow down and read it carefully. Notice who is speaking. God. And notice who possesses the knowledge. God. The verse tells us that God knew Jeremiah before his birth. It does not say Jeremiah consciously knew God before birth. That distinction is easy to overlook. But it is the entire point. Divine foreknowledge is not the same as human pre-existence. One describes God's eternal knowledge. The other describes the soul's personal memory. Those are very different ideas. Our search then carried us hundreds of miles west, into the world of ancient Greece. There we encountered a philosopher whose influence on Western thought can hardly be overstated. Plato. Writing in the 4th century before Christ, Plato proposed a remarkable idea known today as the theory of recollection. According to Plato, the soul existed before birth. It encountered eternal truth. But when it entered the physical body, it forgot. Learning was not discovering something entirely new. It was remembering what the soul had once known. Suddenly, we found a concept astonishingly similar to the modern viral claim. But there was one important problem. This wasn't the Book of Enoch. It was Greek philosophy. Now an even bigger question emerged. Could ideas like Plato's, later Jewish traditions, and the Book of Enoch have become intertwined over centuries? History suggests that cultures constantly influenced one another. The Jewish world of the Second Temple period existed alongside Greek culture for generations. Philosophical ideas spread. Religious communities debated. Writers responded to one another. That doesn't mean every belief came from Greece. Nor does it mean every similarity proves direct influence. But it does remind us of something important. Similar ideas do not automatically share the same origin. Two traditions can ask similar questions, while arriving at very different answers. By this point, the investigation had uncovered something unexpected. The idea itself was ancient. But the evidence suggested it did not originate in the passages of Enoch most often cited online. There was only one final question left to answer. What do the scholars who have devoted their careers to studying the Book of Enoch conclude? Their answer would bring our investigation to its final chapter. Every investigation eventually reaches a moment when all the evidence must be laid on the table. Not assumptions. Not traditions. Not internet summaries. The evidence. Over the course of this journey, we examined the passages most often connected to the claim. We explored chapter 22, where the spirits wait for judgment. We explored chapter 42, where wisdom searches for a home among humanity. We followed the idea across history. Through scripture, through philosophy, and through later religious traditions. Now, it is time to ask the simplest question of all. What does the Book of Enoch actually teach? We found a book deeply concerned with justice. A world where corruption spreads because heavenly beings rebel against God's order. A prophet who is invited to witness realities hidden from ordinary human eyes. A coming judgment where no act of violence, no oppression, and no injustice escapes God's notice. We found warnings against arrogance. Warnings against forbidden knowledge. Warnings against the abuse of power. We found hope for those who remain faithful while evil seems to prosper. We found visions of restoration. Of a righteous kingdom. Of a future where wickedness will not reign forever. But after examining the text in context, we did not find a clear statement that every human soul remembered heaven before birth and lost those memories at birth. Does that mean the Book of Enoch is less important? Quite the opposite. One of the greatest mistakes we can make is believing an ancient text must support every modern claim in order to be remarkable. The Book of Enoch has influenced centuries of religious thought. Its language echoes through Jewish literature. Its themes appear in discussions of angels, judgment, righteousness, and the coming triumph of God's justice. Even today, it offers a fascinating window into the hopes and fears of the Second Temple period. It reminds us that long before the New Testament was written, people were wrestling with questions that still matter today. Why does evil prosper? Will injustice ever be answered? Does heaven see what happens on earth? Those are the questions that pulse through the pages of Enoch. And perhaps They are the reason the book continues to captivate readers after more than 2,000 years. Perhaps the greatest lesson from this investigation isn't about memory at all. It's about history. Ancient ideas rarely travel unchanged. As they pass from one generation to another, they are interpreted, expanded, combined, and sometimes misunderstood. That doesn't make those later traditions meaningless. But it does remind us of the importance of returning to the earliest sources. Because history deserves to be heard before it is retold. And ancient voices deserve the chance to speak for themselves. So we return to the question that began this documentary. Did the Book of Enoch teach that humanity lost its memory before birth? After examining the evidence, the answer appears to be not explicitly. Yet our investigation uncovered something just as fascinating. A story of how ideas move across civilizations. How traditions evolve. And how one ancient book continues to inspire questions that refuse to disappear. Perhaps that is Enoch's greatest gift. Not that it answers every mystery, but that it encourages us to keep searching. If you found this investigation valuable, subscribe to the 9th tablet for more evidence-based explorations of ancient history, forgotten civilizations, and the texts that continue to shape our understanding of the past. If careful, honest research matters to you, consider leaving a like. It helps these documentaries reach more people who are searching for answers. And we'd love to hear from you. What surprised you most during this investigation? Was it Chapter 22? Wisdom's journey in Chapter 42? Or discovering how ideas can travel across centuries? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. Until the next investigation. Keep asking questions. And keep following the evidence. Wherever it leads.